Look, it's always difficult when we want to talk about natural disasters and the weather and climate and forecasting. Usually it's the climate alarmists who want to blame climate change for every natural disaster, despite the fact we've always had these disasters and always will. The alarmists have been a bit muted, though, when it comes to the current floods in far north Queensland, because they'd look pretty silly blaming all this on global warming when it was triggered by a cyclone, and all the IPCC reporting tells us that cyclones have been less common and less severe in recent decades. But instead of that, there's been criticism of the Weather Bureau for not providing more accurate predictions about the amount of rain.
Suddenly we got this 1 in 100 event that just dumped on us. Nobody was prepared for it. And all of those emergency services people that have been manning these centres since the start of Jasper were absolutely exhausted. And then they had to ramp up again. It was, a lot. We couldn't stop the event from happening. It was always going to happen. But if the warnings had been there was a prospect of this happening, a lot of people would have been a lot more prepared.
Well, maybe, but the responsible federal minister has jumped to the bomb's defence.
Meteorology is not a perfect science. The Bureau of Meteorology do the absolute best they can with the science they have available. I can't think of another agency in the world that I'd rather be relying on to make decisions. And I can tell you, having participated in several of these meetings over the last few days, that the efforts of emergency services personnel to keep people safe would not have been possible without the advice of the Bureau of Meteorology.
Really? A little bit of yes, a little bit of no, isn't there? I mean, I've shown you in recent weeks how some farmers are so fed up with the Bureau that they now pay private operators to give them private meteorological forecasts. And it seems sometimes that the Bureau gets a bit carried away with the climate predictions, the long-term predictions, ahead of weather predictions. It was only a few months ago they were warning us all about the looming spring and summer of the big dry.
The Bureau of Meteorology declaring the world's most consequential climate driver is here.
So consistently what we are probably projecting for the summer is that Australia will continue to see warm and dry weather. And it's really up to individuals and communities now to prepare for a summer of heat and fire hazards.
Yeah, well, since then we've seen wild weather across southeast Australia, and more than the average summer's rain dumped in the first couple of weeks of summer in South Australia. And now flooding in far north Queensland and more rain in New South Wales. It all just goes to show the unpredictability of weather and the unreliability of forecasting. And it underscores why sensible people should be very sceptical about what the forecasters say will happen in 50 years' time when they have so much trouble predicting the next 24 hours.